Okay, turn with me in your workbook to page 133. So it's going to talk about social and civic life and how it varied by region. So in the New England colonies, village church and school served as the center of social life for the New England colonies. Populated by religious reformers and separatists, religion was a key part of life in the New England colonies. So let's go ahead and underline that. Every town had a church, which was usually built in the center of town. That way no one was too far away to attend services. The church served as the center of social life, too. Townspeople gathered there for meetings and special celebrations. Now I went ahead and highlighted these three terms. They are very important. If you don't have a highlighter, you can box them in. So go ahead and do that now. Pause the video if you need to. Or if you have a highlighter, it would be better to highlight them. So self-government was important to the New England colonists. Although they were ruled by British laws still, the towns also made many local laws for themselves. And so that's what self-government means. I'm going to draw an arrow. Most New England towns held a town meeting every year where citizens voted on town laws and for local leaders. So this town meeting was very important. This was an example of early democratic practice, and it was one of the first forms of self-government. Town meetings were the center of political and civil life. In some colonies, every man had a voice. The political leaders in the New England colonies were usually the religious leaders too, so many of the laws they made were based on religious beliefs. Puritans wanted everyone to be able to read the Bible. As a result, education was highly valued in the New England colonies. Parents often taught their children at home, but most New England towns also had schools. Massachusetts even required towns with more than 50 people to build a schoolhouse. And you can do this word search if you would like to. Let's go ahead and flip to the next page. The Mid-Atlantic, which we call the Middle Colonies. Villages and cities were the center of social life in Mid-Atlantic colonies. People from many countries settled in the Mid-Atlantic colonies. They brought different religions, traditions, and cultures. The colonists were a diverse group of people. However, they came together, that's important, they came together to work for business and trade. Town and city markets were the centers of social, political, and civil life. At market, the merchants, farmers, artisans, and shopkeepers would meet, exchange goods, and share news. Most middle colonies were ruled by an English governor. That governor made the laws, but he also allowed the colonists to form representative assemblies. And assemblies, it's a group who meets for a certain purpose. Colonists elected leaders to the assembly. The assembly helped make laws, although the governor made all final decisions. These representative assemblies were an early democratic process, just like our town meetings, that gave the middle colonists a taste of self-government. And there's that word self-government again. Most children in the middle colonies learned to read and write. However, there were fewer schools than in New England. Parents often taught their children at home. Instead of going to college, children were expected to learn useful work skills. Farmers taught their children to run the family farm. In towns and cities, boys learned to run a business or to practice a trade such as carpentry or blacksmithing. And then in our southern colonies, life was very different. So there were very few large towns or cities in the southern colonies. They were more spread out. So many Southerners lived on small rural farms. They rarely saw other people. When they did, plantations were the center of social life. Self-government, there's that word again, was important to the southern colonies. In 1619, Virginia colonists set up the first elected legislature in the colonies. It was called the House of Burgesses. And it was the first elected legislature in the colonies. Its elected leaders made laws for the colony. However, only white landowners were allowed to vote. White men without land could not participate in government. Neither could women, slaves, free African Americans, or American Indians. Each plantation was its own community, but the southern colonies were also divided into counties. Each county had a county seat. Community and government buildings were located at the county seat. Landowners met at the county seat to make laws and elect government leaders. So once again, more examples of democratic practices and self-government. Both the House of Burgesses and county governments were examples of early democratic practices in the southern colonies. The fascinating fact. Planters also attended church and traded crops for goods at the county seat. The county seat was the center of political and civic life. There were very few schools in the southern colonies. Children of wealthy landowners were taught at home. Most had a private tutor for reading and writing. Older boys also learned to run the plantation, and older girls learned how to manage a large house full of servants. Things were different on small backcountry farms. Few children were educated. Boys learned to plow and hunt. Girls learned to sew, cook, and clean. Many were not even taught to read or write. So those are the differences in the self-government of the New England, Middle, and Southern colonies.